Hey, how's it going? Scott Farkas here. Just checking in, just do a little progress update. Go through my stats real quick. My high weight was 304 pounds. My surgery weight was 284 pounds. And we're now about 8 weeks after that, and I'm currently weighing in at 249 pounds. I finally broke past 250, which has made me really happy. And I've got about 49 more pounds to go. My target weight is 199.8 pounds. Anyway, wanted to just tell you real quick, what am I doing right now as far as my diet, exercise, all of that. Making note that it's the middle of July. I'm exercising almost not at all. I work at a facility that has kind of a campus with multiple buildings, and I walk back and forth 2 or 3 times between these 2 buildings, but that's about it. Last month I was walking just about every night for about a mile, but at 9 o'clock at night it's still 89, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's just miserable, so I don't do a whole lot of exercise. I'm mainly leaving it to the diet, trying to keep my protein high so that I don't lose a lot of muscle mass in that, but something I need to improve upon. I've had my slowest week of weight loss this past week, where I've lost 2.5 pounds in 1 week. Wouldn't necessarily call it a stall, but it's definitely different than the 4 to 8 pounds, 6 pounds that has been coming off. But honestly, if I just kept losing 2 pounds a week, I'm not too worried about that. Looking at what's my diet consist of. A lot of people ask about that. My diet is less than 1,000 calories. It is no more than 35 grams of carbohydrates per day, at least 70 grams of protein per day, no more than 20 grams of fat per day, and at least 86 ounces of fluids, and I'm able to include protein shakes in that value. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I tend to still kind of stick to my shakes. I'll be honest. On the current diet that they give us. Let me tell you just a little bit about the PostOp diet. Every doctor's different. I went to Dr. Ghrelin, so he and his nutritionist, Stacy, have a 9-week, it's technically 8 weeks, but it's a 9-stage program, starting from right when you come out of surgery. You're on clear liquids. The next phase is full liquids, meaning not, like your protein shakes and things like that. Then you go to a puree stage where you're having, pureed meats, pureed beans. I kind of skipped the meats, but I like the pureed beans and guacamole and some of those things. Then you go to kind of a crock pot meat, soft meat stage. Then a mechanical soft, which is like, meats that are like hamburger ground up meats. And then the final stage, which I will start this, basically in 7 days, a week from today, which will be no restriction. Nuts, beef steaks, chicken steaks, really anything that I want to. Going back to what I said just a minute ago, I still kind of stick to shakes. I'll be honest, when I eat crock pot meats, when I eat a lot of these things that I'm able to, they taste pretty good, but I kind of feel like when I eat, like I'm eating, when it gets into my stomach, it feels like I've just swallowed some rocks. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't, I don't have like pain or sharp pains or anything, but it's an uncomfortable feeling most of the time when I eat those things. I don't feel sick. I don't feel nauseated. Again, I had a vertical gastric sleeve. It's not like a dumping syndrome that you get with a Roux-en-Y or a mini bypass or some of those procedures. But it's just kind of this uncomfortable feeling, like you've got something pushing on the sides of your stomach. And what it does to me is it makes me not necessarily just love eating things that I used to love. And this is a benefit. This is actually a really, really good thing, because I don't enjoy eating these, fatty, big meals anymore. But what I do have to figure out is, how do I get the protein in with a regular diet without living on Premier Protein? One of the concerns I had before I had this procedure, I don't know if any of you share in some of these concerns. People are worried after the procedure that they're not going to be able to eat the things that they like, and they're worried that they're not going to enjoy going out to eat with people and a lot of these things. I think I was worried about those for all the wrong reasons, thinking like, oh, I'm going to want these things, but I can't eat them. I'm going to want to eat a lot of food, but I'm not going to be able to. Let me try the best way I can describe what that really is like for me. Let me give you kind of a before scenario. I think I did this as probably my very first video. I used to be able to, in one sitting, eat close to 3,000 calories. I loved like going to like Indian buffets, and wasn't like a Golden Corral kind of a person, but I liked going to, Vegas buffets and things, and I could eat several plates of food. I loved eating a lot of food in a short amount of time, and I'm not a real snacker. I didn't eat typically a large breakfast, if any breakfast at all, but when it came to lunch and dinner, I'd eat these big meals. I was a big guy. Still kind of a big guy, but after the surgery, what changed for me was I really just don't care about food, which is the very best part of this procedure, hands down. What was for me, in some way, I don't know if it was the same kind of food addictions a lot of food addicts have. I just was not suffice. I was not content unless I ate massive amounts of food. And now that I can only eat 4 ounces of food, I feel content very quickly. But things that I loved before, I don't necessarily love anymore, even when I am allowed to eat those things. I'm almost never hungry. I don't have a huge craving for food. When I think about the things I used to love to eat, I don't really think, man, I want that anymore. It's kind of gone. In fact, like I said, I'm repeating myself here. If you were to ask me what I want right now to eat, the answer is nothing, really. But if I'm going to eat something, what I would prefer is just one of my protein shakes, because it feels the most comfortable going down. I feel the most satisfied with all the vitamins and things it has in it. It's the best experience for me, and I enjoy that the most. So I'm just kind of going with it for now. So let's talk about the why. I always like the science side of the VSG procedure, and really the science side of just about everything. The reason that I'm not hungry, and the reason that I feel the way I feel when I eat a lot of the time, has everything to do with how the doctor performs the VSG surgery. You've heard me talk about this before, and if you've done a lot of reading, you've probably read a lot of the same things before. I'll give a disclaimer. Some of what I'm going to talk about is not a perfect science. Doesn't apply to everyone or everything or every procedure. But one thing that is consistent with all vertical gastric sleeves is when they remove the 85-80% of your stomach, they are removing a major source of the hormone Ghrelin, which is what tells you you're hungry, and gives you those cravings. After having the surgery, I was able to very quickly differentiate when I'm hungry, which is almost never, from what's going on up here, telling me what I think I want, and that my head wants something versus what my body is actually telling me I want. And that was a very easy differentiation after the surgery, because I knew that I didn't have a physical hunger, because that Grenlin supply had been removed. Now, here's one thing I've talked about. Some doctors, when they, and I'll probably have some pictures that'll come up here, when they remove the, I'm going to call it the right portion of your stomach, because in the pictures it's always on the right. Some doctors will just cut a straight line up the stomach, and it's going to do two things if the surgeon prefers that, what I'm going to call antiquated method. The primary source, and again, this is not a perfect science, so I'm sure somebody's going to argue with me on this, but from what I've read, the primary source of Ghrelin is actually from the upper right portion of your stomach. In that top curvature is where the primary concentration of Ghrelin comes from. If the surgeon does a straight line cut on the stomach, a big part of that Grenlin supply, or a portion of the concentrated supply of Grenlin, doesn't necessarily get removed. So it's very important that that's removed. And we're going to come back to that topic a little bit. So important to make sure you have a surgeon that follows the contour of the stomach and removes the entire top curvature of the stomach to be successful and to really get rid of those hunger pains. And so let's see, I told you I was, let me be very specific about what I'm eating now. So most days I'm drinking 3 Premier Protein shakes. My vitamin supply comes through those shakes, but then also I use Bariatric Advantage Chewy Bites. Bariatric Advantage is a company that specializes in really high quality, high-end vitamins for bariatric patients. There's a few of those companies around. I like this one the best. I had kind of a mentor that I learned a lot about this procedure before I started doing the months of research that I took before I decided it was for me. And he had tried a lot of things that convinced me that Bariatric Advantage products were good, were that all of his blood work always came out perfectly. He never had any hair loss, which was that was huge for me. I still take biotin and biotin supplements, but even these vitamins are loaded with biotin. They're loaded with B12. I still take a B12 supplement just to make sure I've got everything I need. But these Bariatric Advantage products are just loaded with the things that bariatric patients specifically need. My complaint about them is, and again, in some of the forums you may have seen some posts about this, I hate candy, which is surprising for somebody who is over 300 pounds. I do not like sugar-sweet things. And these Chewy Bites taste like Starburst. And you're probably all screaming for joy right now of something that tastes like a Starburst. But to me, it's too sweet and kind of sugary tasting, although they are sugar-free. Or they're 5 calories or something. Look them up. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, really good vitamins. Let's see. So B12 supplement, biotin, my vitamins. I also take a Bariatric Advantage calcium supplement. I'm doing 500 milligrams a day of their calcium Chewy Bites. And those actually I don't mind so much. They have a wider variety of flavors. They've got like a chocolate and a lemon and a strawberry watermelon or something. And I just kind of rotate through them and do a blind grab out of my little bin that I have of them. But all that's going pretty well so far. Again, noting that Premier Protein shakes have 50% of your daily requirements of calcium in each shake. And I'm doing 3 of those a day, so I'm probably overkilling. Some days I'm only doing half. I'm only doing 250 milligrams supplementing on the Bariatric Advantage calcium, just because of what I'm getting through the shakes. But if I have a really light shake day, if I only do 1 or 2, I'll do 2 of those. I'm doing a lot of soups. I like soups. Things that are wet tend to not hurt. It's not a hurt, that's the wrong word. The discomfort I talked about earlier. I like soups. They're nice, even when they have meat and potatoes and things in them. Again, watching your carb counts and sugar and all that. They feel the best and they're the most comfortable for me to eat, so I tend to gravitate towards them. I read a lot of things about people who get nauseated when they eat certain things. Here's something I learned just for myself. This doesn't apply to everybody, and everybody's different. Um, I'm going to start with eggs. If you ever read on the forums, people say, "Oh, eggs make me sick. I feel like I'm going to throw up." On and on and on. One thing that I found very quickly is if you eat a full stomach, 4 ounces worth of anything, it tends to, if it's a solid substance, that tends to make me feel not good. But what I found is that I was doing it wrong when I ate that way. So, for example, if I want to eat eggs, the answer is not to eat 4 ounces of eggs. The answer is to eat one egg, and then I would mix it with something. I think I may have talked about some of these little recipes and things before. Maybe not here, maybe on in some of the forums. But when I eat eggs, I'll do eggs. I'll do like a tablespoon of guacamole. I'll do a little hot sauce in there. And maybe even some refried beans if you want to make it kind of a more of a Mexican-y thing, a little chili powder cooked into it. But I find if you mix things up, some softer things with the hard things, and it made all the difference in the world. So eggs by themselves, if you eat 4 ounces of eggs, sick. If you eat one egg with some guacamole, little refried beans, little hot sauce, and you blend it into like, oh, and some cheese, get some cheese in there, do perfectly fine. Don't have any of those issues. Some people eating pureed beans. Again, if you just eat 4 ounce pureed beans, yeah, you're going to be sick. But mix things up. Do beans with guacamole or with a little bit of crock pot type of meat or canned meat or something, and chicken. Do some chicken and beans and things, and those things tend to sit much better. So that's my advice. Things are going to make you sick if you eat an entire stomach worth of one thing. Don't do that. Mix them up and uh, try something different. I'm a lover of cabbage. I think I'm one of 5 people in America who like cabbage. But there's a website that's called bariatriceating.com. I've seen it pop up multiple times on different places on the web. They have great recipes, and they have a great one of my favorite ones they have on there. Again, being a soup kind of a person, it's a like a Polish galotki kind of a thing where it's if you've ever had cabbage rolls, they have a stew they have on there, and I made a whole pot of it and froze little 5-6 ounce portions of this, where it's basically ground beef, ground pork, lots of seasoning. There's has a vinegar flavor to it because not only do you put cabbage in it, but there's some a little bit of sauerkraut in there. But anyway, lots of tomato sauce and stuff. Fantastic. But that's a good site if you haven't found a good site. I do not enjoy Pinterest a whole lot. I find that it's just a lot of nonsense on there, and it's so random and nothing's proven. It's just people reposting a lot of stuff. I found that very specific sites dedicated to bariatric diet are much better, and a lot of times they'll have reviews and things on it as well. Let's see. I find that if this is common sense stuff I'm saying here. I have to chew things to an applesauce consistency. I'm sure many of you have heard that before. If you try to eat like you did before and you eat real fast, you're going to get sick and uncomfortable really fast. But I find that if I chew things and over chew them, and sometimes this is where I don't think I enjoy foods the same way. For example, I went out to dinner with my wife 2 nights ago, and we went to one of my favorite Indian restaurants. Now, I can't eat the rice anymore, and I can't eat the garlic, delicious, wonderful naan anymore. So I'm sticking to like my coconut lamb korma, and I just eat the sauce and the lamb. And very little of that. And what I found is the old way I would eat, you'd have the curry in your mouth and the lamb, and you chew it rather quickly and swallow it. But now, when you take a piece of lamb in your mouth and you're chewing it to an applesauce consistency, by the time you get 2/3 of the way through that process, you basically have a flavorless piece of lamb that you're trying to grind up in your mouth. There's no more curry taste because you're working it. This is where some things are not as enjoyable as they were before because the speed in which you eat it and the amount of chewing you have to do on things, which is probably the way I always should have been, but I wouldn't enjoy lamb korma before if I was chewing it to an applesauce consistent pulp, before I swallow it. So I did not enjoy that the same way I did a few months ago. Um, anyway, that's important. Um, there's a few places around that I eat. Most of you probably don't have a place called Cafe Rio, but a place that started in Salt Lake and now it's in several states around that's kind of going nuts. A lot of these little Mexican places where you go through a line and you build a salad or a burrito. There's some other ones like a Chipotle is kind of the same thing. They let you buy their kind of crock pot shredded meats and things on the side. Well, this particular one lets me buy salmon. So I can buy an 8 ounce, which will feed me 2 meals, portion of like grilled Mexican seasoned salmon for $2.50. It's amazingly affordable. But these are the kind of things I gravitate towards. Fish is really easy for me to eat compared to chicken or beef or pork or lamb. Just as a side thing there. When it comes to soup, stuff I buy in the store, I like the Campbell's, what are they called? I think they're called slow simmer soups. And they've got one that's like a Southwest chicken chili that's amazing, goes down really easy. Again, watch your carb counts for the day. Sometimes I'm just doing shakes and I'll only do 1 meal a day and it's 4 ounces of like this soup. And then there's a couple little restaurants I've been to, like I don't know if Zupa's is a nationwide thing, but there's a soup place in Salt Lake that's a chain and they have like 16 different kinds of soup. Again, watch your fat, watch your carbs. Some of them are worse than others, but again, sometimes I'm only eating one actual meal a day. So let's see. Next thing is how am I feeling? I feel really, really good. Again, I've lost 55 pounds. I've got 49 to go. I feel more energetic. I definitely feel better when I look in the mirror. I'm looking much, much better than I was before. The people are finally kind of really starting to notice at work and in other aspects of my life. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable asking, what's going on, but some people I'm honest with and some people I'm not. Some people I just say I've had a drastic diet change, which is being honest, but in a roundabout sort of way. And there's a few people I've kind of told what I've done. That sounds bad, doesn't it? It's not. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And like a lot of people said, I wish almost that I had done this 10 years ago because it just had such a huge impact in just the couple of months post-op. And it's not been, the best thing you can do to prepare for this procedure is to make sure you understand the risks and all of the bad things that can happen and prepare yourself for that. But I found that almost none of those things happened to me. It's actually been a very, I don't want to say it's easy. There's nothing easy about going through this. And I thought the hardest part was the pre-op and right after surgery. And most of that, the difficult part's more in your head than physically. That first week or two after surgery is really rough. What are my struggles? My struggles right now, I get dizzy if I was to say there was one like complication, and I know it's just, calories or low blood sugar or something. I probably need to look at my iron too or something, see if I'm anemic or something, but every day at least once I'm going to stand up out of a chair and I'm going to be so dizzy I could almost, I'm 3/4 of the way to passing out. But I've worked with Stacy on that, and I got to make sure I'm getting enough carbs, because if you're just eating the shakes, sometimes you don't get enough for your body to function quite right. You do need a few, but yeah, something I've got to kind of figure out, but that's been a little bit of a challenge. But overall, feeling great. Stairs are easier. I'm not breathing heavy anymore. Used to be on phone calls, and people would sometimes mention, that my breathing, my closer friends anyway. So all of that's good stuff. The last thing, going back to that Grenlin thing, advice for everybody, and I say this in almost every video, make sure you pick a good surgeon. It's worth flying either in the United States to somebody out of state who is a professional who uses, the two things that you always hear me talk about. If you were going to ask your surgeon, if you're not sure if your surgeon is the right surgeon, ask them two questions. Ask them if they perform the inverted gastric sleeve, and ask them when they're doing the sleeve if they follow the contour of the stomach. You've all heard my stuff on that, and the more you read on these groups and forums, the more you understand how important those two things very specifically are in a surgeon, and they've got to be masters at those techniques. This is and those two things will mean everything when it comes to how your risk of leaks and things like that. Your if they skip either of those two things, your risk of acid reflux goes through the roof. In fact, my surgeon locally, who's the best surgeon in Utah, told me that every patient has acid reflux for the first year, and then it typically gets better. I'm 2 months post-op. I have not had acid reflux even once. I accredit that to a phenomenal surgeon who employs both of those two techniques, following the curvature all the way to the top, and then using the inverted gastric sleeve technique, which pulls the suture line in and rounds out your stomach and eliminates a lot of these acid pockets. The follow the curvature of your stomach, going back to my previous videos, is if they don't do that, it leaves a big pocket at the top of your stomach, which lets you eat too much, which means you also won't lose the same amount of weight you would if they follow the curve nice and tight all the way to your, I'm sure I'm wrong here, but your esophagus kind of area. But they cannot leave a pocket at the top, and that pocket will also create acid. So anyway, inverted gastric sleeve, make sure your surgeon uses that, and that they also follow the curvature of the stomach all the way around. You do not want a surgeon who cuts a straight line up your stomach. That will be a really bad procedure. And some of them might even do a very small curve, but they really need to take it right up to the top and not allow a pocket to be created up at the top. Very important things. Talk to your doctor. Make sure they do that. If not, go out of state. As you know, with me, I left the country. I went to see Dr. Alon in Tijuana after a couple months of research. Great doctor, but there's great doctors everywhere. Just make sure they do those two things. Anyway, there's my update. Probably wasn't that quick, but anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.